Good afternoon. My name is Matt Roberts. I'm Director of Analytics and Research at Formula One. Today I'm going to share with you our case study utilising biometrics in research, winning hearts and minds, alongside Populous, who were the agency involved in this piece of work. Thank you so much for nominating us for this award. We feel like we've got a very worthy winner with this case study, and hopefully we can persuade you that is the case. So, first of all, just to share with you this quote from our CEO and chairman, which underpins a lot of the work that we're doing, in particular this piece of work that we're going to share with you today. As you can see from Chase's note, everything is about enhancing the racing experience at F1. We know that if we have a great racing product, we will get more viewers, more fans, more commercial opportunities, more media opportunities, and this is underpinning everything that we're doing at Formula One. So in terms of how we've measured that kind of race experience that we talked about, we've traditionally done lots of market research surveys, we've done dial testing, which whilst they've all been very useful to understand how good a race is and how we can improve an F1 race, they've all been missing something. They've all been missing the aspect of what disengages fans. So we understand very well from all what we're doing is actually what makes fans engage. When are they engaged? When are they happy? When they're enjoying racing? But we tend to not know when people aren't enjoying racing. And that's why the piece of work that we did was so fascinating and so impactful, because it allowed us to understand what wasn't working and what we needed to do to improve those aspects of racing to improve our product. So we commissioned Populous alongside Mindprober to do a piece of work where we actually looked at the biometric response to our F1 races. We measured galvanic skin response and emotional arousal, and Tim will talk to you about this in more detail. This was the first ever in-home long-form sport biometric piece of research. So people did it in their natural environment, and we were able to understand the passive engagement of fans, whether they were disengaged or engaged, and it really helped us understand exactly what was working and what wasn't working with our races. But to talk in more details, I'm going to pass you over to Tim, who's going to take you through the methodology, and then Greg, who's going to share the results with you thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. As Matt has said, I'm just going to go through in a bit more detail in exactly how we went about conducting this research, the specifics of the methodology, and how we actually got some results to deliver to F1 in the end. The first step for us is obviously to find some participants who would take part in the research. We knew these had to be F1 fans, people who are probably going to have to commit their Sunday to watching most of the races throughout the year, and that wasn't too difficult. And we recruited 60 of them. Following that, the most important part is getting the technology to the respondents. With our partners Mindprober, we packaged up the technology in the post and sent it to them. This, as you can see from the screen, comprised a pack that was strapped around the palm for a start, and then another one on the finger, 2 galvanic skin response sensors. Now what this essentially was measuring was the sweat levels from the palm of the hand. As these sort of go up, we could see where engagement was high, and where these were lower, we could see where engagement or where respondents were disengaged. The next step then was to link them up while they were watching the race. So each Sunday during the season, they would sort of put the galvanic skin response sensors on their hand. The team at Populous would ensure in the days before they had everything they needed to get set up and ready to go. And then they just watched the race the sort of 15 minutes before the race started on F1's global feed, see the whole race, and then 15 minutes after with the podium and the winner's circle and that sort of thing. So a good sort of 2-hour chunk on a Sunday for each respondent. Step was to get the results. The main output in the first instance is a dashboard hosted by our partners Mindprober, and it delivers the results in a really simple way. As you can see there, it's essentially a line which shows, as the race goes on over that period, where that response on average is very high, and then where on average it is very low. And you can see an example of that in that graphic. I'm now going to pass over to Greg, who's going to talk through in more detail the results and the impact that the results have for Formula One. Greg.
Thanks very much, Tim. So I'm Greg Morris, Senior Program Research Manager at Formula One, and as Tim said, I'm just going to take you through some of the key findings from the research and things that we've been able to implement as a result of it. So the first we want to share with you is actually from the pilot study, which we ran at the British Grand Prix in 2018, and we're looking at the opening credits at the start of our international feed before the race. So you can see these country facts that come up on the screen, and you can see the engagement trace developing, and there's quite a sharp decline in that engagement trace as these facts are on screen. Now we're going to go to a circuit map and some footage from previous races at the research, and it's when we go to that engagement starts to pick up again. Just showing that fans really are interested in the racing itself. That's what's going to build their excitement in the lead up to the race. But that dip in engagement is something that would have been very, very hard to spot without this research. Then if you fast forward on to 2019, this is now the Australian Grand Prix, the first race in the 2019 season, and we've implemented some changes to this opening sequence. The country facts are now coming up in a small corner of the screen, and then we go into that same map of the circuit with previous race footage coming along as well. You can see we've got a totally different engagement trace now. We've got a steady increase in engagement the whole way through, building anticipation of the race much better than it was before. But that change is something that would have been nearly impossible to find without the granularity and the second-by-second engagement data that we get from this research. Okay, so now we're going to talk you through a few other areas where we've been able to implement some changes to our TV production in particular. The first one is onboard cameras. We used to do research about various elements of our TV coverage, and onboard cameras was one that people were always very, very positive about. Pretty much all the feedback was good, but actually here we found that when we use them in the midst of a battle with two or more cars close together, that's when the engagement is really strong. If a car is out front on its own, lots of clear track ahead of it, actually people aren't interested in the onboard cameras in that circumstance. So we've been able to refine our use of those cameras. Midfield runners is also an interesting one. We get lots of feedback saying that people want to see more coverage of the midfield. Recently, people have said it's more competitive than the front of the field, where a few cars tend to be far ahead of everyone else. But actually, we found that if we concentrate on the midfield for too long, people do become disengaged. They're worried that they're missing something at the front of the field. So again, the granularity of this study has been able to really help us get a better understanding of what people want. A few other areas to move on to: analysts and commentators. So commentators obviously play a huge role in our engagement with a race, but it's really important that what they say links up with what's on screen. And actually the next area, on-screen graphics, is a really good example of this. If we've got say a tyre performance graphic on screen showing the degradation of tyres, it's really important that the commentators talk about that graphic and explain it and what impact it might have on the race to help build the narrative of the race. Otherwise, if they're talking about something completely different, it can be disengaging for the viewers. And then the final one is rules and regulations. It's played a really important role in helping us understand what type of racing people want to see. The prime example is with overtaking. People will often tell you that they want to see races with lots and lots of overtaking, but actually all overtakes are not equal. If Lewis Hamilton's at the back of the pack, he'll get past a number of cars quite easily because he's got such a superior car, and that doesn't necessarily engage viewers because they expect it to happen. We need battles and we need uncertainty around whether the overtakes will happen. Then the impact on the brand itself, if we move on to a few areas where we've been able to have an impact. Motorsport have been one of the big advocates of the research within the company. We've got a quote from Pat Simmons here, who's Chief Technical Officer within the motorsport team and has had a long career working within F1 at a number of F1 teams. He's talked a lot about the bank of knowledge that we've been able to build about our fans' engagement and how it's helping their team to move the sport forward in the right way. So in terms of that impact, there's three kind of really big areas, really big things that it's helped us with. The first one is obviously TV viewing. In 2019, we had a global cumulative audience of almost 2 billion across the season, the highest we'd had for 6 years in F1. Live race viewing itself was up 7% on the previous year, having been in decline before that. In terms of new regulations, as I said, it's played a major role here, most notably in negotiations for the Concord Agreement, which was signed recently between F1 and all 10 teams. This is the contract that essentially sets the regulations for the sport moving forward. It's an agreement that normally takes about 6 years to negotiate. We were able to do it in about a quarter of the time because the evidence from studies like this showed the teams that we were looking to move forward in the right way. And the last one is broadcasting renewals. We've secured a number of renewals with broadcasting partners in major markets like Italy, Germany, the Middle East recently. And the dialogue that we can build from studies like these to help broadcasters improve their coverage, help their viewers' satisfaction, and therefore secure kind of the financial future of the sport has been really, really vital. So that's it from us. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you think that this research is as valuable as we do and that you think it's worthy of an award. Thank you.